Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third in our series of webinars for Tandem Theory. Today's webinar is Social Media is Evolving, Are You? My name is David Colson. I'll be your host today. I'm the SVP of Digital at Tandem Theory. With me today are two of our social media experts to kind of talk to us about some of the trends that we're seeing. First is Jen Sharp in CX Planning.
Hi, I'm Jen Sharp. I'm a customer experience planner here at Tandem Theory. I have been working in social media seemingly since the advent of social media marketing. I've worked with a variety of brands in different industries and have really seen how social media has changed over the years. And I'm super excited to be here today to talk about that and where social media is going.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Also with us is Kenzie Phillips, who works in our CX Planning group and our social media.
Hi, my name is Kenzie Phillips. I am a Gen Z digital native who grew up not only with a passion for social media, but also figuring out how it works. And I recently just graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design with a degree in social strategy and management. And now I continue to do social media work with the Tandem Theory CX Planning team. And I'm really excited to present to you guys today.
Awesome. As we dive into the topics today, just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions for the panel, there is a chat to the right. So you can go ahead and type any questions as we go through. We do have a dedicated Q&A at the end, but we will answer questions as we kind of go through the presentation. So what to expect? With over 1 billion new social media users entering the marketplace in the last 2 years, the next evolution of social media will challenge the way that we're currently engaging with audiences. So really the question is, are you ready to evolve with them? Kicking us off, we'll share a few stats with you today. The first being that customers who engage with companies over social media tend to spend up to 40% more with those companies than other customers. So today when we're going through these trends, a lot of what you'll hear is what the increase in audience is, how these audiences are hoping to engage with your products, and what are some of the places that they're looking for that great content and that great connection with your brand. The 5 key trends that we'll cover today encompass community. We'll talk about experiences, insights, really digging into the data of social media, e-commerce experiences, and then, of course, amplification, that always great paid versus organic way of making sure that your message is getting out there. So really, as we dive into this, the question we're asking is, are you ready to evolve? First up, we'll talk about community, creating buzz through audience participation. So 44% of customers say that they feel more connected to a brand when they create, participate in, and host relevant conversations online. So as we dig into community, tell us more about what this trend holds.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about community, as the stat said, we're talking about the way that a brand is interacting with their audience through, again, these conversations, through content, through their social media strategies. We've seen kind of an evolution that we'll talk a lot about from, brands talking at their consumers and really just pushing ideas towards them, now to, brands talking with their consumers and having real kind of human connections and human conversations with them, rather than just, kind of, again, pushing that messaging out there without acknowledging the people who are interacting with it. We're also starting to notice that community management is something that is no longer optional. Consumers are taking note, and they are noticing when brands are doing those copy and paste responses to things like DMs or comments. And so really personalizing that is something that is not only already expected, it's going to continue to be expected as social media continues to grow as a place for brands to exist. And then we're also seeing the utilization of multiple platforms. So it's really turning into a game of, you have to go to your audience. You have to build that community on these different platforms and find out, how are your audiences different on each platforms, instead of just expecting your audience to come to you and be treated as the exact same audience. So looking at that evolution of community, as I said, kind of in the past, brands had used social media to promote their current marketing efforts and really, again, just make that one-way conversation happen, just, pushing out their ideas and their messaging and their products. And it's not necessarily that this isn't something that still happens. It's just something that we've seen kind of change as now we move to the present, where brands have begun to really recognize the steps that are necessary in order to build these strong relationships with their followers on social media and see where it leads to, as in, from more purchases to more brand advocacy from their followers. And then in the future, as we see more platforms kind of take after TikTok and these really hyper niche algorithms, we're going to see more and more of those hyper niche communities start to form. And as I said, with the platforms and seeking your audience on each platform, you're really going to have to seek your specific community and your specific audience on those platforms in the future. A brand that I really love and that I think is doing this super well is Taco Bell. They have a very strong community-centric approach to social. And the first thing I want to say is that although Taco Bell is a big brand name and they have a lot of followers and a lot of resources, this is a strategy that anyone can implement. No matter where you're at in your social media journey. This is just, again, focusing on listening and engaging in real time in order to influence the type of content or the type of responses that you create for your audience. Taco Bell is not afraid of using user-generated content. On their Twitter, they will go and search up not only the tweets that they were added in directly, but they will also just look up Taco Bell. They will look up Baja Blast or other products, or also keywords of things that are going on in their industry in order to see what content is out there that they can engage with and utilize on their social media feeds. An example of that is this example on the left here, which are actually a few of my peers from school who created a fake campaign for Taco Bell and posted it on their accounts, not really expecting anything of it, but then Taco Bell actually reposted it as they do with a lot of their user-generated content. And that created a buzz not only within our group and our school and whatnot, but also within the comment section below the Taco Bell post, which really is what is building that community and showing your audience that, hey, we're listening and we see these things that you tag us in, and we're willing to engage with that. So looking at how you as a brand can approach this, we're going to look at it in a crawl, walk, run phase. So crawl being that baseline and run being, one of the higher level things you can approach. So for a crawl, providing that reactive tailored reply that we had talked about earlier, those copy and pasted responses are no longer going to cut it. And people are not going to want to interact with a brand who isn't taking the time to interact with them either. So really taking the time to customize those and build your brand voice and really treat the comments and DMs that you're seeing just as normal everyday conversations that you're having with a person. The next phase being the walk phase, initiate those proactive engagements that we talked about. So when you partake in social listening, really allow that to influence your content and influence the way that you're approaching your strategy. So if you see a lot of people are tweeting at you and they're tweeting either funny things or things that you might want to engage with, just take that in and allow that to be your content and really show your audience that you're taking into consideration what they're engaging with and what they want to see as well. And then at a run, as we said, those conversations are really what bring in consumers. So create these niche and exclusive groups, lead these conversations, take that first step to talk about what's going on in your industry or what's going on with your products, with your community. It not only creates that sense of exclusivity, but also a sense of leadership within your industry.
Awesome. Thank you for talking to us about that, Kenzie. A question, are there any tools or tricks out there in gathering or engaging or finding these types of conversations? Like, what are some of the tools that you use? Or if someone's starting out, how can they kind of ground up build into some of this listening ability?
I definitely think if you already have, some social media strategies in place, some of you might have access to things like Sprout Social or Hootsuite or Brandwatch, which are definitely paid tools that you can already utilize if you have them and are already using them. But if you're not looking to invest in something like that, or you just want a free alternative, going into each individual platform is baseline. You can do that on each platform. Again, going on Twitter and searching those keywords, Instagram, searching for the content that, again, your industry might be interacting with. Each social media platform has a way to participate in social listening, just see what your audience is interested in. And then there's also some tools like Google Alerts where you can put in keywords and really see what's coming up about your brand or your industry in order to stay on top of, again, what is being talked about and ultimately eventually lead those conversations. But I definitely think we'll dive a little bit deeper into specific tools on each platform in the insights section as well.
Awesome. Something great to look forward to. As we move out of communities into experiences, really when we talk about content and platforms and what people want us to do and how we talk about things, it's really changed a lot from a product focus to a great storytelling and really bringing the product and lifestyle to life. When customers feel connected to a brand, 76% will buy from them over a competitor. So a very great stat just to lead into that feeling of connection to a brand and more so having a conversation with a brand. So Jen, tell us more about some of the trends we're seeing in experiences.
Yeah, I think in terms of experiences, this dovetails really nicely with what Kenzie was talking about, because social experiences are also about creating a connection in a way. So while community management is really more about that connection to the brand or the people behind the brand, experiences are creating a connection to the product itself. And what we are seeing is that people's decision making is really being influenced by that full brand experience. So in the past, while I feel like what's happened is people were scrolling Facebook or Instagram and a product would come up and they'd say, yeah, that sounds great. I'll buy that. Now people are really, giving more thought to where their money is going. And so that full brand experience matters to them now more than it used to. We've also seen TikTok. I'm sure that everyone that's here right now has heard about TikTok and how it's changing things. But really, it can't be understated how much it's changing things. This shift to video-based media, and more specifically lo-fi media, is on the rise right now. And we're seeing how it's affecting even other platforms, with Instagram coming out this year and saying, we're going all in on Reels because they know that TikTok is a major competitor for them. And customers also want brands to take a stand. Again, they want their money to matter. And so brands, you'll see this with Penzeys Spices or Ben and Jerry's. I mean, they're not afraid to go all out and talk about things that are happening in pop culture, politics, activism, things like that. And that is mattering more and more to consumers. And so, yeah, what we saw in the past, and again, when we talk about the past, like Kenzie said, this is not, you don't have to throw this out. It just can't be the strategy that you lead with. But in the past, we saw, people were really using static imagery. Usually you'd see a very high production value on that. It was clear that it was staged with a photo shoot, and then alternating that with memes and other trending topics. And what we're seeing now is that brands are really shifting more towards showing off those products with animation or videos. They're also getting their customers more involved. Right now, we're actually working with a brand to help them get their customers more involved in terms of conversation on the different platforms, and also getting more user-generated content from them. You'll hear that referred to as UGC. But that is really helping brands level up across all channels, because they can re-promote that user-generated content through email, push notifications, on the website, wherever. And then in the future, again, with TikTok creating that shift, we're seeing that how people perceive traditional advertising is changing, and they really want that value-based marketing. They do want lo-fi. They do want real time. I think people want to be able to see themselves and experience themselves in a product, and that is a way that they're doing it. And in fact, so much so that right now, Be Real is a new emerging platform where it gives you get a notification you have 2 minutes to take a photo. And there are brands like Elf that are leveraging that right now to show off their products in real time. And so a brand that is doing a great job of this, and honestly, they've been doing a great job of this for years. I think their brand just instinctually understands this, and that's why they have a really, almost cult-like following. I've been following them for years, but they really do understand the difference between leading with your product and leading with content in a way that helps people experience that product. And so, yeah, they do really create content that helps show off their products. It's not just advertisement and, hey, here's this body butter, here's this shampoo. They're really showing people using it so that it feels more of like a luxurious experience, rather than like, hey, I need shampoo, so I have to go out and buy that. And they have been talking about current events for, again, as long as I've been following them, really big on the cruelty-free aspect, very big into environmentalism and fair trade, and again, other forms of activism. And, while I do think they understand their core demographic, they also understand that inclusivity, and this is something that is really changing, I feel like right now in marketing in general, is this idea of inclusivity. I think that they have done a great job of positioning themselves as like, hey, anybody can be a part of this. They want people to see and experience their products and feel comfortable in the skin that they're living in and feel like they're a part of something. And so, yeah, as Kenzie said, even though Body Shop, just like Taco Bell, is a very big brand, there are still ways that any brand can really activate the idea of having experiences on social media. So that first phase would really be show off your products. Don't just talk about them. Really help people understand those products and bring them to life. And then the next would be facilitating that participation. So, one thing I've learned over the years, and this isn't just on social media, is that people, they want to talk about what they want. They want to talk about, themselves to some degree. And this really helps, I think, foster some creativity. So whether you're doing contests, polls, different challenges, you're creating TikToks and asking people to stitch you, what you're ultimately doing is getting your customers to create content on your behalf. And what I found in doing this is that you'll find that your customers will source ideas that you didn't even think of, or that you didn't realize there were parts of your brand that were resonating with them that then you can use in different ways. And then this last phase would really be, empowering your social media managers to do more of that, again, real-time lo-fi content, giving them the ability to hop on trends as they're happening. Some brands that do a really great job of this are Duolingo and Scrub Daddy. Like, as soon as a trend comes out, later that day they have a video coming out, and I think that's really resonating with people because they're really in their audience mindset all the time.
I dig it. So something that I think a lot of brands struggle with is identifying when something is a good fit for us, or when we should check it out, whether that's a trend or a platform. And I think the biggest question we get a lot recently is TikTok for me? So how would you vet for a brand, whether it's time to engage in TikTok, and what would you tell them to kind of begin and starting to do to vet that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that brands are ready to use TikTok when they're, ready to go a little more lo-fi. I consider TikTok a more dressed down platform, giving people a peek behind the curtain. Something that I think has resonated with a lot of brands, and then therefore the people who follow them, is when brands, show off behind the scenes, things that are going on in the office, when they're creating new products, and kind of poking fun at themselves in a way. And so, I think this is true of anything we talk about today, that it's not an all or nothing proposition. So if you're not sure, you don't have to have the perfect strategy. You don't have to have this huge pipeline ready to go. I would say, see what your competitors are doing, see what your customers are talking about, and then going out there and just experimenting and seeing what lands with your audience.
I love it. Experimentation is always great. Our next topic or trend is actually in insights. So really looking at the social data, and honestly, social data can also help you vet, whether it's time to engage in a new platform and what types of content to take to it. A stat here says that 72% of surveyed executives said that social data is already the top data source used to inform business decisions, even more so than market research. And honestly, we believe in this because, again, it's that great first-party data that you're receiving directly from the people that love and follow your brand and are providing that. And so following that kind of voice of the people and understanding, what types of information they're looking for, how they want to engage, where they want to engage with you, is all, really great insights to unlock. So there's a lot of trends and insights. Kenzie, tell us more about what you're seeing in it.
Absolutely. So I think going off of the last section where we talk about, going on there and figuring out what your customers want, asking them that, this is a really great way to figure out, like, am I ready to go on TikTok? Well, ask your audience. Do they want to see TikToks from you? Are they on TikTok? This is a great place to start with that, and looking at insights. Again, is that social media, it's that direct line to your consumers, both for qualitative and quantitative data. So you have your typical key performance indicators and the typical goals that you're trying to measure through, numbers of comments or numbers of followers. But then you also have comments, you have engagements through other tools that we'll talk about, where you're just getting, more qualitative data, where you see, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they spam bots? Like, you're really getting some insights into what is going on with your audience. And it's also kind of going back to that two-way communication. Your consumers, if they're taking the time to interact with your account in whichever way, they do expect you to know them in a sense. If they leave a comment saying they don't like something, they do expect that to be seen. They expect that to be implemented or changed in some way. That is just the way that social media is. I find a lot of people will go to share their opinion on a product or on something that they care about. And creating that two-way communication, it begins with that customer comment. So you're making sure, again, that community tactic that we talked about of creating those tailored replies, those are super important to taking that comment and making sure that you're getting the insights that you want from it in order to innovate and better your brand or your product. So in the past, a lot of brands kind of utilized media more so just to generate leads and understand follower and demographic data, which is still it's still great to use as that type of tool. But there's so many more insights you can gain from social media. And we've begun to see that with brands who they still utilize things like email surveys or website surveys, but they really truly have begun to see the value in using social media as another listening tool. And in the future, as social media only continues to grow and become a hub for feedback, these type of insights are not only going to determine, social media or platform specific, or even just marketing decisions. They're ultimately going to be something that help, change the product ideas that a company is coming up with, business strategies, much larger decisions than what they have been in the past. A brand that's doing this really well is Havenly. They're utilizing some of these tools that we're going to talk about to engage their audience and create, again, that community, but then also create a culture of feedback on their pages. So Havenly utilizes Instagram stories, and within Instagram stories, you can use things like the question sticker or the poll sticker in order to gain various insights. And the way that Havenly uses this is that they create small quizzes, or they create stories that ultimately lead the customer to another story or another call to action. So this example here, they ask a question, and after you answer a certain amount of questions and you feel you're engaging with the brand, they will give you these answers, and these answers lead you to a blog post that talks about your style of interior design. And so these are a really great way to not only garner engagement and engage with your audience, but also gauge the interest and awareness of your brand and the products that they're developing. And then these type of insights can also lead to, again, blog posts or products that you want the consumer to buy. And those types of insights can provide, how efficient is this being at meeting our goal that we want to meet. So looking at how your brand can approach this, at a crawl, again, utilize those things, those tools that we talked about. Ask questions in your captions, in your copy, create polls, get an idea of what your consumers are interested in. And these don't always have to be super serious polls and phrased in certain ways. Sometimes they can just be fun polls in order to, engage with your audience and create, again, that feedback culture. At a walk, take those insights that you get and begin informing your content with them. Again, consumers want to feel like that their insights, the comments and opinions that they are leaving are making a difference. And so informing your content or your product innovation with that social listening, with those insights, is definitely the next step to take. And then at a run, we have all these tools that we've been utilizing, but another way that brands can actually get real-time conversations and reactions with their audience is by innovating and piloting new ideas for live streaming. So utilizing tools like Instagram Live or YouTube or Twitch, if that's where your audience is, utilizing those live stream tools as a way to, again, get into a deeper conversation with your audience and create more than just a two-way street conversation, but really be able to ask those follow-up questions and dive deeper into why they may not like something or why they do like something. It's just a really great way to be able to, again, have those open and honest, almost focus group like communications with your audience.
Awesome. And engaging with these audiences and the experiences that we're creating, talk to us a little bit about what are some of the metrics that matter? What should I be paying attention to? And I'll actually tie it back to a question that was already posed earlier. In regards to social listening tools, how would you approach determining the brand health of your company if perception is trending up or down?
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So for the first question, I think overall KPIs and what metrics you're looking to find, that depends a lot on the goals that you want from your social media, I think. So just for an example, if you are looking, for engagement to see how engagement is doing, you're going to want to look at not only, again, that qualitative or that quantitative number of how many comments, how many likes, how many retweets. You're also going to want to look at the quality of those types of comments or the quality of DMs that you're getting, because you could be getting thousands of DMs, but if they're bad quality, if they're negative, that's not helping you towards your goals. So I think just analyzing what your goals are and then finding the best way to, again, gain those insights on various social media platforms. It's a very much an internal question. But going off of the second part of that question of determining your brand health, I think, again, that's a very qualitative look at the insights on social media. So Google alerts and tools, again, for all those social listening going on each platform, or brand watch, those types of tools will really be able to give you a qualitative look at what people are saying about your brand. Because if people are saying positive things, that's an indication your brand health is doing pretty well. But if it's continuing to go into the negative, that might be a sign that you need to kind of start at this walk, which is informing your content or your product innovation based off of these insights that you're getting.
Got it. Thank you so much. Our next topic, we'll be diving into e-commerce. So adopting social commerce. So as we've seen, e-commerce is exploding and tying into all of the different platforms and across those social platforms and experiences, as well as more and more shoppable experiences. So kind of a huge stat. In 2022, US social commerce sales are expected to reach over 45 billion, with more than half of the country's adults making a purchase on social media. And so we've seen this exploding with more people making purchase decisions in social, whether that's looking at products, engaging in feedback, looking at reviews, or the quick click of a purchase within a shoppable social commerce. So tell us more about what does this explosion mean and how best can brands really harness the power of e-commerce within social media?
Yeah. So, I think one of the reasons that it's exploded over time, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is that, I really feel that when it came to social media, again, people were scrolling and brands had, 5 seconds to capture their attention. And that's really how people purchased things via social media. But now what we're finding is that customers are actually using it more intentionally. I'm definitely one of those people. There are brands that I follow, tried and true, and I'll continue to purchase from them. But every now and again, I'm like, oh, I need a new backpack for this, or I need some new shoes. Let me go out there and see, new brands that may be emerging, or brands that have sort of shifted their positioning and now are more in alignment with what I need or where I want my money to go. And we're seeing that really just across all social media. And then, as you said, it's become so much more, it's become a lot easier to shop through social media. And now there's an expectation that people will be able to do that. So if I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Pinterest, and I see something, there is an expectation from a consumer perspective that they should be able to buy it right then and there. And then, there's been this rise in influencer culture. I feel that it started back with YouTube, where definitely what they called beauty gurus, they'd be getting makeup from brands and showing it off. And then these brands would see this huge explosion of people coming to their website and buying those products. And now for sure with TikTok, we saw that on Instagram as well. People really do care about what the influencers they follow say about certain things. One thing that has been shifting in the last couple of years is really what defines an influencer. So while it used to be before, people were really only searching for influencers that had millions of followers, 2, 3, 5, 10 million followers. Now we're really seeing a rise in micro influencers, people that have 100,000 or less followers on their platforms. And in some way, those people are getting even better engagement because they have more one-to-one interaction. They have more trust and rapport with their audiences. And so more brands are leveraging influencers than they ever were before. And so, yeah, as I talked about, in the past, what people were doing is saying, hey, here's this product, here's a link to it on my website, go and buy it. And again, you can still use any of these methods as part of your overall strategy, but that's really what brands were leaning on in the past. And now what we're seeing is that brands are no longer doing that. They're actually utilizing these in-platform features. Again, it's on Facebook, Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram. They have their own social shopping experiences and putting those products directly there so that people can shop as they're scrolling and not ever even really leave that experience. And then as we go towards the future, it really will be more of this blurring of the lines between these social platforms and the own channels that you have, really making those feel like more cohesive experiences. And so a brand that does a really, really good job of this is Shop Amber Interiors. I think Shop Amber Interiors really understands the idea of needing to create that seamless shopping experience and really elevating people beyond just inspiring them or getting them to feel, in an aspirational mindset about something. And so, what you can see they've done here is that they've posted an image of a room that's beautiful, it's stylized, but instead of forcing people to search for the products in the room, they're saying, hey, here's exactly what you can buy, and making it very easy for them. Or, hey, maybe you don't want this specific one, but here are some other options that are pretty close that you might like even better. And again, really keeping them in that in-app experience, because you actually could compel an additional purchase. Maybe I'd continue scrolling through the feed and thinking, I don't just need a rug, now I need a lamp, or maybe I need a side table. And they're making it extremely easy for people to do just that. And so really the first step that brands can take, again, when we talked earlier about showing off your product. So show off that social media content on your product pages. I know some brands are actually pulling in a full stream of all of their posts on their web pages. But there are brands like Key Sunglasses who are actually putting user-generated content directly on their product pages so that you can see their actual consumers using those products in real life. And then the next step would be, setting up those in-platform shopping features. So again, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Snapchat, they all allow your customers to buy directly through their platforms rather than taking them out of that experience. And then with that final phase, make those products come to life, make that shopping experience really come to life. Charlotte Tilbury is a makeup brand out of the UK, and they've created this virtual store that after this, you should absolutely Google it. It is really cool. You can go in and it actually mimics an in-store shopping experience. So there are different displays laid out. There's a concierge service where you can ask questions. You can shop with friends, really, again, blurring the line between reality and virtual reality. And I think this is really where social shopping is going in the future.
That's awesome. And when we look to see more of these shoppable experiences and e-commerce tie-ins, as most brands are probably curious, what's the cost? Is this a heavy lift, or are there costs per platform to be able to set up and tie in these experiences? What does that look like?
No. So, all of these platforms, they have a vested interest in keeping your brand there. They have a vested interest in keeping your customers there. So they've made it really easy. It's free. You don't need a lot of development work. It's not something that you have to get an engineer involved in. It really is. Your social media managers can easily go in there and say, hey, let's pull down a few products and put them in here. And again, as with all of this stuff, it doesn't have to be this full story store when you first launch it. Maybe you want to start with a couple of products that you know are your best sellers, or as Kenzie said earlier, you know, if your customers are talking about things in the comments or telling you what they want, that's also a great place to start. And just put a couple of things up there. Start with maybe 1 or 2 stores. Instagram has a really great platform, I think, and they've done a great job of helping brands be discoverable. So start there, and then again, just experiment and keep building from there.
That's great. So as we're building on each of these trends, we understand our community, we've built great experiences, we have tied in the data to understand what people want, and we're looking at, you know, kind of how we can extend ourselves into an e-commerce or shoppable experience. You know, now comes the rubber to the road of amplification, really understanding the investment of social media and really the organic versus the paid portion of it. Like, how do we really, you know, amplify what we're doing out there? This was a shocking stat for me. Companies will spend 177 billion on social advertising in the United States this year, surpassing the amount of ad spend directed at television for the first time in history. So this is huge, that for the first time in history, there will be more spent on social media advertising than television, to drive at those connections, to push experiences, and to really engage these audiences across platforms. So let's dive into more of what the trend is for amplification.
Absolutely. So when talking about amplification, there is the talk about, you know, there's organic performance and organic content that you do create. But I think the biggest takeaway here, if anything, is that organic performance and paid activity do truly go hand in hand in order to make the algorithm on each platform work better for your brand. Paid activity and paid ads are what ultimately enable you to get in front of new potential followers and new audience members. It's truly what builds that brand awareness and that promotes, you know, that brand discovery. But organic performance can ultimately be what keeps your audience there. What after they see that paid ad and they go to your profile, what is on your profile in order to keep them there, in order to encourage them to follow? So it really, again, goes hand in hand in a well-balanced approach. But ultimately, social does offer that opportunity for retargeting in a cookieless world. So just the ability to target your specific audiences and, again, get in front of them without necessarily just using your organic content, which might not do it as efficiently. So in the past, there was a big habit of doing the spray and pay method. So just putting money behind, as much money as they have in the budget, behind their paid ads and just letting them go. But ultimately that, you know, again, isn't the most efficient method as we've seen moving into the present. And in the past as well, we've also seen brands create content specifically for advertisements. So as I said earlier, you know, what is on your page that is going to encourage your audience, to your new audience that you've reached? What is going to encourage them to follow you? What makes them stay there? Creating content, you know, I've seen on YouTube, people would create content for a YouTube ad and you go to their page and there's nothing there. And so that really, again, that disrupts that flow that we had been talking about in e-commerce as well. That flow is really important. So if they are going to stay aware of your brand, what do they see on that profile, on that platform? And in the present, you know, brands have begun to reach their target audience, have begun to kind of utilize this balance. And they've also begun to see a really valuable, a valuable source of building relationships with influencers and creating influencer content, in addition to that organic presence as well. And in the future, as we saw with that statistic, social media spend is only going to continue to increase. And so marketers are going to have to adapt to things, you know, data privacy restrictions, you know, predictive targeting. It's going to change so much as the spend increases, but ultimately this is something that, you know, people will have to consider, again, in that balance to make the algorithm work. A brand that really understands the value of paid media is Warby Parker. Warby Parker, when they first started, really prioritized creating that budget for PR in the beginning, and that is ultimately what got their name in Vogue and GQ, which is what skyrocketed their business and their presence on social media as well. They also have understood the value in, again, investing in their social content and working and building those relationships with influencers, as Jen kind of talked about with that experience and e-commerce section, influencers are a huge part of that. But Warby Parker really sees that value in a micro influencer and understanding where their audience is outside of glasses. Glasses itself, it's not something that influencers will make content on, but there are influencers who wear glasses and who have an audience of people who are interested in what they have to say and what they do. So being able to really put money behind an influencer that they believed in led to a lot of success in their social marketing. Looking at how you can approach this at a crawl, reinforcing that key messaging with omni-channel retargeting and marketing, looking at, your followers and intersecting that with your email addresses that you send to on your email list. Really crossing those can just reinforce that messaging and again, create that stronger connection as you begin to implement paid media to reach a new audience. And then at a walk, creating an always on sponsored threshold strategy. I think this is an overarching theme throughout this presentation of your audience is giving you insights. Look at what your audience is looking at and what they're interested in. So on Instagram, if your post is doing better than some of your other posts, they'll actually let you know. They'll be like, hey, this is doing better than a lot of your other posts. You might want to consider boosting it. You might want to consider putting some money behind it and turning it into a paid ad. And that is what this is referring to, is that if you see your consumers are enjoying a piece of organic content, there's a chance that if you put some money behind it and include it in the paid media strategy, that new followers will also like it and also come and join your page. And then at a run, looking to, again, boost influencer posts, really create those relationships and also utilize user-generated content, things that are featuring your brand, and ultimately, again, create that community and put that investment behind influencers who will reach audiences that you might not have known about.
That's awesome. And when we talk about that, kind of the rise of the micro influencer, right? Something that both you and Jen spoke to. As a brand, how can I identify these micro influencers, or what's the best way to understand the use of when I should engage with an influencer?
Definitely. So I think for the first part of that question, again, as I said, it's, Warby Parker glasses are not necessarily a thing that influencers specifically make content on, but looking at who your audience is and seeing who else are they engaging with, what other types of content are they engaging with, and finding influencers within those content realms. For an example, Logitech. Logitech doesn't only talk to tech influencers about their products. They don't only create those partnerships. They have also created a lot of partnerships with college vloggers or college influencers, people who make content about being a student, because they utilize this tech. They buy from Logitech, they use these products, and people will listen to them and get, again, influenced by what they're using. So Logitech really understood where their audience is and where to meet them as well. And as for identifying when, I think it's just a matter of investment and what you're willing to put behind it, because whether you're using micro influencers or larger influencers, paid media does take that budget, and you do have to be able to work with their team and figuring out what's best for both the influencer and your brand as well. And that totally also comes from building that relationship over time as well.
Awesome. So kind of wrapping up the 5 trends that we've done, talked about today, here are the main takeaways. Build community by implementing community management systems and those social listening tools. Really curate your content that showcases the values and experiences over the products themselves. Really gain those insights through timely social media engagement and reflection of that data, right? And innovate your e-commerce strategies to really optimize more towards social media shopping and their shoppable experiences. And then with amplification, really exploring that balance between paid and organic social media content. I would really like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and especially our panelists for providing their insight and expertise. We will be moving into the Q&A. So again, if you have any questions for the panel, there's already a few in chat. Go ahead and type those in the chat panel to your right, and we will dive into them. So a question that we received earlier from Elise said, one of my KPIs is to increase followers on Instagram. How would you strategize more followers? What are some of the tips and tricks to gaining more followers on Instagram?
So I think when specifically on Instagram as well, ultimately you have to look at like, are you optimizing your profile enough? Are you taking advantage of all the tools that Instagram has to offer? And then I think it's also a matter of, again, trying to engage with your audience and engage with the audience that's already there. And as we just talked about with amplification, creating that balance between paid media to reach new followers and bring them in, along with the organic content that you're creating. For followers, I think it's one of those KPIs that relies on a lot of other measurements in order to see if it's like a good point, like that you've reached a good point with it. So again, interacting with your followers and consistently posting, as well as just, again, taking those insights that we talked about, seeing what is going on within your industry or within your audience, to make sure that you're really doing all that you can to optimize your page and reach them as much as you can.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would say too, considering adding some content that compels sharing. So contests is a really great way to do that, where you say, hey, share on your stories or share with your friends, tag them in the comments, and you can win. And again, it doesn't even have to be anything huge. I've seen people give away a $50 gift card, or maybe it's one of the products. I think natural discoverability, as Kenzie said, with optimizing your profile, I would also say, with hashtagging, when you're thinking about like Instagram, let's say, I found that there, I've had success with brands in the past where there's a mix of hashtags that both have very high volume and then ones that have maybe medium or lower volume, so that, when you're using those and people are searching them, you're not getting buried beneath a ton of content. And then, yeah, like Kenzie talked about earlier with amplification, if you have a piece of content that is doing really well on Instagram from an engagement perspective, it has a very high rate, a lot of comments, that might be something that you want to boost, not just to your own audience to get the algorithm working for you, but also to boost to new audiences too, since it's already landing with your ideal customer.
I like it. Another question that we've had from the audience, and something that we've really kind of talked about in setting up for this webinar and in debating, does cadence matter as much when it comes to posting anymore, or is it okay to pursue more quality over quantity? So talk to me more about kind of the cadence of it all in terms of actually pushing out content and what that looks like in today's social media.
Yeah, I'm definitely a believer in quality over quantity. If you were to search right now, you'd see a lot of blogs talking about how daily is really the way to go. I would say, with social media and just marketing in general, there's not really a one size fits all approach. So I would say, if you have 2 or 3 really great things and really great pieces of content to share a week, that is far better than pushing out a few really great things and then 4 things that aren't so great, because you have to think about the algorithm and how, if you're pushing out content people aren't engaging with, the algorithm's going to take that into consideration and say, their audience doesn't really like this that much, so we're going to push this down in terms of what they're seeing, and then go from there. I think too, when a lot of brands, and I've seen this with brands I've worked with, that they burn themselves out by trying to do too much too quickly. And so starting somewhere and then raising it if you think that's needed, if you can be consistent with that, is far better than trying to go all in and then saying, wow, we're really overwhelmed now.
100%. Yeah, I definitely think you have to consider your resources and your ability to, put what you're planning to put into social media actually into action, or else you definitely will run into a burnout situation. And as Jen kind of said, this kind of case by case basis, not only for your brand, but I think also for each platform as well. Sometimes the nature of the platform, TikTok, the more you're posting, it tends to seem like the more that you'll get engagement from various people who it pops up on their For You page. But that is also a much, again, as we've said, a lo-fi kind of app. It's more casual. There isn't that much quality typically behind the TikTok videos compared to Instagram. If you're trying to post on Instagram every day, Instagram is a very, I feel like, quality driven type of app, especially if people want to share it to their feeds or their social or their stories. So again, it's a case by case basis, not only for brand, but also for platforms as well.
Awesome. And as we get to kind of the close of our hour here in a little bit, so last call for any questions that you may have. go ahead and drop them in the chat to the right. Something that still pops up a lot, leadership doesn't believe in social media. How can I convince them that it is worth our time and resources? Kind of give me your hot takes on answering and how best to approach that question.
Definitely. I think one of the points that we had talked about was, empowering your social media managers to be able to make the decisions and really connect with your community. So if that's something that, if you are a boss or a manager and you're looking for that, that is something you are going to have to empower your social media team or manager to do. But if you're that social media manager trying to convince your boss to participate in a certain platform or meme or whatever it is, ultimately, I think one of the best ways to approach it is by applying it to a goal that has already been set, whether that's for the business or for marketing or for social media, applying it to a specific goal. So if, hey, this trend will help us get followers, this trend will help us get engagement, this trend will help us do X, Y, or Z. I think that's a really simple way of trying to approach it that puts both parties' interests in mind.
Yeah, agree. And really, yeah, it is about saying, something that I've done before is if I know a campaign is coming out, how does social media fit into that overall campaign? And really help educate people that social media isn't something that's standalone. Everything that we've talked about here, it's not just the content that you create, but also the input that you can have in terms of those insights and how it can fit into an overall strategy or a product roadmap. And I think that really speaks to a lot of leadership of like, okay, social media can drive the bottom line. And then also thinking about how you can really ramp up that program in a way that isn't such a resource drag. That's really where I've heard a lot of the pushback is we just don't have the time. We don't have the people to do that. And there are ways that are really more entry points for social where you can start, sort of planting the seeds of social within your overall strategies.
Awesome. Thank you both for those insights and those answers to the questions provided. That takes us to the end of our webinar. If you do have any questions about social media in general or about anything you heard today, you can reach out to us at the agency. The email is hello@tandemtheory.com. Also to the right of that are the email addresses of each of our panelists. If you do want to reach out directly to them and ask them any questions that you might be curious about. I thank everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Social Media is Evolving Argue. A recording of this webinar will be made available and sent to you shortly after our presentation. And as well, we will be reaching out as we continue our series of webinars this year. So thank you again for attending. And if you have any questions, we'll be in touch. Thanks again.